Welcome into another edition of Capitol Happenings. I'm Rob Kendall, along with Indiana State Senator Jim Merritt. Senator Merritt, how are you?
I'm well. 3 weeks into session, and we're getting a little momentum.
Yeah, it was interesting was watching some of the live feeds, and people are starting to get serious, for lack of a better term.
Yes, when you have you start in the beginning of January, and then we have obviously Martin Luther King Day. We have the inauguration. And these are events that we want to celebrate, and thus you have a stop and a start and stop and start. Now I think we're pretty clear towards the end of April.
Okay, the big issue right now dominating the news, the House meeting basically as we speak about this, is the road funding bill. Mm-hmm. I heard Representative Greg Sturwald speak last night on it. It seems like there are about 10,000 different options at this point.
Well, yes, and I think that a lot of people are contacting their state representative and talking about this issue. I don't think there's any doubt that we do have roads that are crumbling. I think there's also no doubt that we have done a good job in creating roads. Not many states are actually building new highways, and we're doing that. And thus it's kind of an interesting storm right now. And luckily people feel like they can contact us through social media or the internet or a telephone call, or come down to the State House and talk with us.
This issue seems to be emanating in the House as it did last year, and then you guys get it. And we've talked about this a little bit, but let's go into some detail on it, because kind of hearing Representative Sturwald speak last night, and this is not a quote verbatim, but you guys kind of don't pay a whole lot of attention to what each other's doing until the bill comes over to your side. Is that correct?
Yes, and that is correct. As most people know, you can't have revenue-producing bills in the Senate. They have to originate in the House of Representatives. That is where the budget originates from. Now, we can have bills that appropriate, but they can't. You can't grow a tax in the Senate, and thus every money bill, if you will, starts in the House of Representatives, and thus. The transportation bill is starting in the House of Representatives.
Again, the program is Capitol Happenings. I'm Rob Kendall, along with Indiana State Senator Jim Merritt. A couple of different ways you can check us out. You can also find the audio version. A lot of people like to just listen. They're not visual people. We're on SoundCloud and iTunes. You can find us under Central Indiana Today. That's my show. And we podcast right there, SoundCloud and iTunes. You can download the show right to your smartphone or tablet. Listen anytime you want. We're also on radio affiliate WYRZ out of Hendricks County. And we're going to be picking up some more, I know, as we go along here very soon. Because I know you're getting a really good response about the show.
We are getting good response, and I enjoy this. And it's a great way to talk with our constituents, all 6.6 million Hoosiers and 130,000 in Northeast Marion County.
You know, it's interesting because we are now seeing this with President Trump. I was going to call him Donald Trump, but it's now President Trump, that the landscape is changing. And I thought maybe we'd talk a little bit about this today because constituent services is so big with what you do. And right now, you guys are hearing so much from constituents in regards to this gas tax. We has the ability to interact with legislators kind of changed since you started?
Well, in January 1991, we had a very, very busy phone bank. And we also got a lot of letters and a lot of petitions. But obviously back then, the internet did not play a role. And, it's interesting. Back in the 70s, there were committee hearings that were private. There was no one knew who voted on what, and the place was not transparent at all. We have come a long way in the last 50 years.
It is interesting, too. You mentioned phone banks, so there were literally people sitting there answering the phones?
Yes, and we have that today. But more people were contacting us by phone back then because it was pretty much the only way. No one really knew that they could come down to the State House and testify on a bill, but everybody can.
I remember the first time I was asked to come down and talk about an issue. It was then newly elected Governor Pence's income tax reform bill that ended up ultimately passing in some capacity. I'd like to think I played some tiny role in that.
I'm sure you did.
Everybody who testifies think they did, right?
Well, of course.
But I just remember seeing the line out the door, and I'm curious, as the internet has become more prevalent, do you see more people coming down to the State House or more people relying on that digital way of interacting with legislators?
Well, it's just like this podcast is enabling me to contact individuals and let them know that I care and that we're on top of things. It's kind of an interesting mix. I'll get an email that will be just plain evil and calling me names or saying things that aren't factual. And what we'll do is we'll make a copy of that email, and I'll go see that person. And it's an interesting situation.
Internet muscles is what we call that, right? They're probably not that mean in person.
It's easy to push the send button. And so when you end up at their door with saying, ma'am, you sent this and said some things that I don't know if you really know that I read this, but I read every email that I get. And so more times than not, they're backing up a little bit.
Do you get a larger volume like this year maybe when there's a topic like the gas tax than you might say last year during the short session?
Absolutely. I think, and as well as we will get more input this year on the gas tax than we did last year's transportation bill because we made it very clear from the start that it was we need to find out exactly what was going on with the roads and if the roads warranted the situation. And I think we've all studied it. And the first committee, if you will, had quite a demonstrative report that's saying, yes, the roads need the help. They need the reconstruction. They need the maintenance.
Okay, so that's another thing I wanted to get to today. Again, our program is Capitol Happenings. I'm Rob Kendall, along with Indiana State Senator Jim Merritt. You mentioned you didn't mention it directly, but sort of the summer study session. Right. Mm-hmm. So explain to the people what that is and how it helps shape public policy in Indiana.
There are a variety of ways that we can study issues in the State House. One is we have several standing committees that deal with taxes and deal with, like for instance, my utility committee has several meetings during the summer. But then we have other study committees that are topic oriented, like transportation or like vape or like any other issue. And the Tesla issue was studied a couple of years ago.
Which is coming back now.
Yes, it is coming back. And so there are a variety of ways that we can allow people to come to the State House, allow people to watch, allow legislators to learn more about issues, learn more about the situation with the roads and how decayed they actually are. Not only that, but bridges. Bridges are something that we're all concerned about. We've seen situations in other states, Minneapolis, if you recall, where the bridge just fell in, that it's a public safety issue. And not only that, a car safety issue. And so it's another opportunity for people to testify, another opportunity for us to understand the gravity of the situation.
It's interesting, too, for me to watch this gas tax thing play out because it's one of these issues where there seems to be a general consensus we have to fix a problem. And now the big fight is how do we fix the problem? Is it easier when you have the consensus we have to fix the problem, but there's a big fight on how to fix it, or is it easier when you have to just try to build the consensus that there's a problem and then it kind of goes from there?
Well, it's in the last 27 years. I've been here. This is my 27th year. We have gone from a legislature that shoots from the hip and thinks they understand the problem to a body, a General Assembly that looks at data, that looks at results, that looks at facts and pre-K. We have a pilot going on that we will get a lot of information very, very soon on the performance of kids who have gone through pre-K versus kids that haven't. And so we measure. We are metrics. We measure, and that's one of the great things about the Eric Holcomb administration is they're getting back to the Daniels administration way of measuring outcomes. And this is how you make good public policy, and that's hopefully what we will do with the roads.
Is one of the issues that you have, and I had this in municipal government when I served on the town council in Brownsburg, is people don't know how to get involved, or they feel overwhelmed at the process of getting involved, because anybody can come testify on a bill. Joe Smith off the street can walk in, sign the form, and speak for his 2 minutes or whatever the committee hearing allows. Is that trying for you guys because you don't get the input, and then you do something, and then everybody goes, well, we didn't like that?
Yes, and it is. People really believe, and in some regards, it's a gauntlet. Getting here in the State House, getting through security, wanting to know how you sign up to testify on a bill, what you should say, how long you should say it, and those people who are in industry even still. Right. Still are aghast of how you actually go about getting your opinion heard. And so it's not just somebody coming off the street that is just a citizen. It's those that are in corporate Indiana that don't understand it as well.
How much do the hearings actually impact you guys? We talked a little bit about this, I think it was 2 episodes ago, because, of course, last week we had the great Governor Holcomb on the show. By the way, you can go back and check out the podcast. Only audio last week, but we had Governor Eric Holcomb, and then we also had Loretta Rush, the Chief Justice of the Indiana Supreme Court, on the program.
Yes, that was a real treat.
Yeah, so you can go back and check that. That's on SoundCloud and iTunes. But how much does testimony impact you guys, individual people, a lot of times coming and telling their story?
Well, I think it impacts a lot, including in this are these chamber meetings on the weekends, third house meetings. Legislators, when they go in and see people on Saturday mornings at the local diner or wherever they might have these meetings, they come prepared with the facts. But they want to know what is going on in life during the week, and don't be fooled. The legislators listen to their constituents, and a lot of times, like for instance, what we're talking about, the scourge of the opioid crisis. I listen to a lot of people who have lost people to an overdose or whatever. We listen and understand what a collection of opinions can do.
Again, our show is Capitol Happenings. I'm Rob Kendall, along with Indiana State Senator Jim Merritt. We're talking a little bit about constituent services today, because this is the time you really need to hear from people right now as bills are getting drafted and put together. Do you go back and watch, like, say, the House is having their big deal today on the gasoline tax, and we kind of focus on that today because that is what everybody's talking about. Do you go back and try to catch some highlights from that? Do you reach out to your friends on the other side to say what was talked about today? Because, I mean, while you don't really pay a lot of attention, you probably do, to get an idea of what's coming your way.
What we will do is we will review how the committee hearing went, how many people were testifying. That's probably one of the reasons why you had a tough time getting a parking space, is because there's a lot of people here today. And but as well as I have a lot of issues I'm working on. I'm chairman of a committee, and so the bulk of the work will be how the bill turns out in the House. Should it turn out in the House, then the real work in the Senate on the bill itself, when it goes through our committee structure and onto the Senate floor, that's when I'll be dedicating a lot more time and a lot more mind power to it, because you have to be very efficient with your time here.
And there's a third player to this, and we didn't really get a chance to get into it with him last week, but it's the governor, right. Eric Holcomb. So it's like you're playing a triangle here of everybody trying to come together on a consensus. How often do these sort of big button bills go down to the last week, the last day? This seems like a bill that's going to do that.
It very well could, and if it's going to be in the budget, maybe it could be in the budget, or it could be a standalone piece of legislation. It could go down to mid-April or late April. The governor has given us every indication that he will be at the table. Those 106 days that he was on the campaign trail were bumpy on Indiana roads. Spent a lot of time in the car, and he not only learned about addiction in Indiana, but he learned about how bumpy the roads actually are. And just 2 weeks ago, there was an enormous hole in the middle of 465. And so we're all experiencing potholes. We're all experiencing cracks in the middle of a highway. And so we have to do something. It just all depends on what it is. But to answer your question directly, we'll be working on this into April.
Okay, and we'll move on from this, but these two things sort of tie together, so that'd be a good one to do this week. And we'll probably have a show just on the gas tax pretty soon, or
sure.
Road funding.
At some point soon.
With some of the people that are at the table on that. I hope those guys from the House will come over and talk to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But the people that are hearing this and they say, okay, I want to make a difference. I want to have my voice heard. You talked about the mean emails. What is the best way for someone to grab your attention? What is the best way for someone to have you look at them, pay attention to what they're saying, but yet be polite and proficient in what they're doing?
Yeah, I think efficiency is exactly right, and proficiency, if you will. You can drop, more than likely you're represented by, in my neck of the woods, Representative Houston, Representative Bosma, Speaker Bosma, or myself. And I would go to in.gov and go to the legislator page and drop me an email, exactly what your experience is, and if you agree or if you disagree. We need people on both sides of the issue rather than just you're upset about a possible gas tax increase, or you've had an experience on the highways that you're demanding action for better highways. And so I'd be brief, but there are a lot of organizations that put out email that is duplicative. Make it to your own opinion rather than someone else's opinion. Tell me what you feel yourself. I think that individual email is very, very important.
Again, our guest is Indiana State Senator Jim Merritt, you're not the guest, you're the co-host. You're the co-host of the show, Capitol Happenings. I'm Rob Kendall. Thanks for being with us. Don't forget, you can hear us on SoundCloud and iTunes as well. Just search Central Indiana Today. Download the audio version of the show right to your smartphone or tablet. Also can be heard on WYRZ out of Hendricks County, and we'll be picking up some other radio affiliates once Senator's done with his day job, the session. There are some other very hot-button topics that are kind of getting swept under the rug right now, and a couple of them are very important to you. They're not getting swept under the rug, but they're just not getting the attention that everything else is. And we kind of are a broken record. We touch on these each week, but they are very important. How are your bills progressing in your effort to kill heroin in 5 years?
It's interesting. We've put the spotlight on bills that deal with the opioid crisis, and as well as we're working on a budget in the House of Representatives that will be $30 billion plus biennial budget. There are a lot of things going on that aren't getting the same headline, if you will, as the roads issue. But I'm working on issues that deal with hunger, about food stamps or SNAP, as well as the opioid crisis. And as I've said, we have 19 bills. We've had several bills be worked on in committee. We had several bills today pass committee onto the floor, and it's a comprehensive agenda of prevention, of treatment, of law enforcement, of data collection, and it's something that I've got my arms around, and we are trying to eat away or nibble away at the preparation for us to have an all-out assault. To me, if you have a problem or some sort of dilemma, you've got to assess, you've got to analyze. And right now, I don't know how many hospitals have the ability to have detox treatment and recovery. I don't know if there's senior citizen housing that because people like being treated at home, how many, they say 13,000 beds that we can possibly use in detox treatment and recovery. And so we have to understand what equipment we have, what bandwidth we have to tackle the problem, and what we need to add. And so right now I think we're in the assessment and analysis of what we have so we can figure out what we need.
There was a bill that that kind of caused some controversy the other day, and I believe it came from the Senate with I think it was Senator Head. I don't want to say that for sure, but I think it was about raising the pay of the governor and the other statewide office holders. I'm curious if you had a chance to look at that yet, or have you dug into it at all?
Senator Head, and we'll hear more from him about this issue, including the vape issue. Which
and
is
we like
Senate
Randy.
Bill.
He's a good guy.
Yes, he's an outstanding state senator, and not only the pay bill, but we want to talk to him about the vaping bill because that's a controversial topic in itself. And hopefully next week we'll be able to have an interview with him. We have to work slowly on lots of these issues that are controversial, and the pay bill is one of those. My issue is I want the statewide candidates to stand up and say, I need more. I'm new at this job. I need more budget for staff, or I need more pay because of there's a competition out in the workforce. I do believe that we are underpaying our statewides. It's just a question we have to answer for you out there that this doesn't come from increased road money. This doesn't come from anything other than the state fund, the general fund. And so this bill was held in the civil law committee, and there was no vote taken, and there may never be a vote taken. But I do believe that people in state government need to be competitive with the local, with the corporate Indiana, if you will. And so we have good people, not only the people that we have serving now, but good people to come.
Just hearing from people on this, and this may be another topic that you said we're going to have Senator Head on, so we'll talk to him about that probably at that time. But 90% of government is optics, and 10% of it's probably policy.
Absolutely.
And the
perception.
And the optics of it right now are we don't have any money for roads, so we're going to have to raise everybody's taxes. But yet we have money to give raises to statewide office holders who, while you're right for the amount of work they do, are probably underpaid. The average person who's making $30,000 a year skating by goes, I'd love to make $110,000 a year.
Right. I always say that the governor should make more than his staff, and right now I'm not sure that's actually true. I've not gotten deep into this issue, but I do believe that we need good people to run for these offices in the future, and so we need to treat this way. We went through judge salary increases, and I think we got that settled. We just have to have the courage to do so, and like for instance, small schools from less populated areas, I believe that schools should be in metropolitan areas, along with counties that don't have a whole lot of population. So we're going to have to consider increases for them this year. So there are a lot of controversial issues that go on here, and we need to hear from the public. I'm sure the public wants good quality people to be running statewide, and they have large responsibility that we don't know really what the state auditor does, but obviously it deals with money and it deals with management of our state funds, just like the state treasurer.
All right, let's close with this very briefly on this topic, and it is something that has kind of been approached but not really delved into a whole lot, and I saw it on the news today, so I wanted to ask you about it. The amount of robberies in pharmacies have gone down recently. I know Senator Young, I think, has a bill dealing with this further in some capacity, but does that, for a guy like you who's so big in the kill heroin epidemic and opioids and all these sort of things, when you see that pharmacy robberies are going down, while maybe anecdotal evidence, does it give you a little bit of hope?
Yes, it does, and you don't want one. You do not want one pharmacy robbery. However, they have been halved this year. And there's several reasons. One, the real-time safes that CVS and Walgreens and others have invested in, number one. And two, there's better training for pharmacists. And three, the federal government came in last year and assisted the state of Indiana on these robberies and the people that have been accused of them. And I think we've shown that we mean business with these individuals, and that a 19-year-old would walk in and try to rob a pharmacy, not of money, but of pills.
Yeah.
They don't want money; they want pills. And so I think a lot of good factors, a lot of good levers have been pulled so that the people aren't robbing as many pharmacies as they were last year.
All right. Well, Senator Merritt, thank you as always. Another great show. Appreciate you filling us in on what's going on right here in the Capitol.
Thank you, Rob.
Hey, don't forget, if you miss any part of today's show, you can check out a podcast anytime you want. There's a couple different ways you can do it. We're on YouTube. If you just search Capitol Happenings, you can find us there. If you're hopefully watching us on YouTube, or we're also on SoundCloud and iTunes. Just search Central Indiana Today for that, and you can download an audio version of the show right to your smartphone or tablet. Want to thank our home base radio affiliate, WYRZ 98.9 as well. For Senator Jim Merritt, I'm Rob Kendall, saying have yourself a great evening.